Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Transfers podcast, powered by FootballTransfers.com, a new podcast where we bring you news, insight and analysis on that most important of the least important things, football. I'm Duncan Castles and I'm joined this week by one of the most accomplished coaches in modern football and someone who very rarely gives interviews. In fact, I first requested this one almost 17 years ago. He's a winner of more than 20 trophies, including 2 Champions Leagues, 2 Europa Leagues, 3 Premier Leagues, and a host of other further national titles in Portugal, England, Italy, Spain and Qatar, with Porto, Chelsea, Inter Milan, Real Madrid, Manchester United and Al Duhail. Welcome to the Transfers podcast, Rui Faria.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
And it's a real delight for us to have you on the podcast. Rui, I began with your CV because it's one of the most impressive in the game. But I believe you have that CV because you've spent more time thinking about the best way to coach footballers to win than just about anyone I know. And that's what I want to discuss today. The best way to coach footballers to win. There are many ways into this subject, but let's begin with a story that Frank Lampard tells about you arriving at Chelsea in 2004 as a newly crowned European champion and radically changing the way Lampard and his teammates trained. Those Chelsea players were no longer made to run laps to develop or maintain their fitness, because under you all the physical training would be done while playing football. And that caught a number of them by surprise, including Lampard, who came up and asked you why you weren't making him run. What was your response to Lampard when he asked you that question?
Well, I think the most important thing is to understand there isn't a way to achieve success. I think there is more than one way. What I believe is there are ways who can make you win more times. And at that time, the regime that those players were used to was really different from our regime. And they were used to work a lot physical aspects without touching the ball, so outside of game context. And so for them was a surprise that everything or 95% of the work we are doing was involving playing. It's important to say here that before you think about the impact of a physiologic demand from an exercise, we always had the intention of working aspects of the game, aspects of the way the coaches wanted to play. So basically, the question that comes up is the worry of how the team would perform in competitions once the Premier League was very intense and we are coming from a different country, from a different reality, and they were worried that the methodology used at the time would not fit the needs of Premier League. And I remember to say that you will adapt to the needs, that the way we work will help you to adapt to the needs. And you don't be worried with that, you know. And I used an analogy that is still a very accurate analogy for today. That is, a great pianist doesn't run around the piano, does push-up in his fingers. He basically plays the piano. So was the same kind of idea that we wanted to pass to them and make them believe that the way we were working was an accurate way.
So one of your fundamental ideas was the best way to prepare for elite level football is to play football. And therefore, all the training time, which is precious time, there's only a limited amount of hours in the day that you can make professional footballers train when they are at that level playing twice a week, should be done with the ball. So don't make them run around the training pitch or do sprint work without the ball in that limited amount of time you have, and concentrate that time on getting them fit by playing football, because that you believe is the best way to get fit for football, is to actually work with the ball and do football exercises as drills.
Yes, especially a high demanding level where you compete every 2 to 3 days, is no doubt you need to maximize the time you have for training, because it's not a lot, and most of it is to use on recovering from the last match. So basically, is mainly for that. But when you have chances, try to be specific and doing it with the specificity of the game, using exercise, game related, increase the recovering process. Basically, the idea is if you use the game, it's not just the fact that you are using more time to improve in terms of what you want for your team in relation with your style of play and your ideas. And you also develop physiologic conditions that are more accurate to the game. I always believe on this, and I still believe today. And if at that time there was not many people doing it the way we're doing today, is a different thing. There are a lot of people following the same kind of approach and naturally achieving better results.
And the actual training you use, it's not just that it will be done with the football all the time. I remember watching 2 weeks of Real Madrid pre-season training in 2010 in Los Angeles, and noticing that in those 2 weeks you never used the same specific exercise with the players more than once. And I asked you about it after one of those sessions, and you told me that when you're drawing up training programs for a team for an entire season, that you'll never use the same drill more than once in an entire season in order to make the training as interesting to the players as possible.
Yeah, it's true. I think one of the keys to keep players' motivation is to be always changing what you present to them. That will make them or demand from them to be focused, because every time you present a new thing, their concentration is higher. I would not say that we will not repeat exercises. Maybe we repeat some exercises during the season, but the distance of time that we do it is enough for the players to keep their concentration and focus on doing the work. So I think it's fundamental, the diversity of exercises you present to the player, that will in the end require the best concentration or the best commitment from them.
Because concentration is something fundamental to a footballer's performance on the field. Concentration is actually something you're trying to train with the exercises you use day to day.
Yes, using another analogy, if you are not used to read, you read 2 pages and you get tired, or you are reading and you are not getting anything from what you are reading, and that is related with concentration. So you demand people to be focused on your training sessions, on your exercises, to learn from or to develop better skills or to solve problems inside the situations. Concentration is in a certain second of the game, or even less than a second of an action or of something happening in the exercise, the player matching the outside information with his own information and giving the best answer and the best and the most accurate answer. And that is always related with concentration, and this is something that is trainable and that you improve with time, of course, and of course will develop a number of skills that in the end they will have a huge transfer to the match.
So you mentioned recovery there and the importance of recovery in training, and this is basically once you've got the players to the fitness level required to win a league match or a Champions League match, which I think takes 2 to 3 weeks of pre-season training. Is that correct?
No. I think you really need more time, but in 3 weeks, it depends, of course, on what you are doing. But 3 weeks immediately give you a good level of fitness. We are speaking about professionals that don't really stop for a long time. Holidays should be really to recover from long seasons. To be fair with you, I don't fully agree when I see players going on holiday and they just want to work and work. I think they need to recover. It's important to do something, to be active, but not with the intention of not losing the physical condition, if you can say like that, or not losing that shape, because that doesn't exist. They really need to recover. But also it's important that they move and they do something. But even the break they have is sometimes even less than an injury they get. Yes, in 3 weeks, I would say it depends, of course, of the work you develop. But 3 weeks is a window of time that give you already a good level of capacities to start competing in a good level.
So Rui, once you've got the team, the players to a fitness level required to win league matches and Champions League matches, the next task is to ensure that they remain there, which means avoiding injuries. And I think that this has become a very big issue in modern football. You see a lot of Premier League managers, for example, complaining about player availability, how many players they have in the treatment room at one time, and saying that's a cause of bad results for the team. Actually, I think it's fair to say that the way a team is coached, the way the team train day to day, can directly affect player availability. And one of the things you've concentrated on during your career is using techniques to ensure that players don't get injured from overexertion in training and overexertion in matches. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that, how you manage that, how you emphasize the process of recovery post-games to keep players fit?
Yeah, it's of course related with what you do on the pitch. First of all, the way you prepare the players, how specific you are to develop the best conditions to compete and to perform. This, of course, at the first. And then the way you manage the group during the density of matches in competitions. A methodology gives you a pattern of work, gives you a way to keep the process without losing the control of it. I'm not saying control, I'm saying not losing the control of it. What happens is that if nature allows you to perform when you are fit, also you need to understand that nature demands time. No doubt methodology influence player availability. Is within methodology that you find the way to not lose the control of the process. And during competition where you have the highest density of match, is fundamental to understand that competing and recover have same importance, and it's like if you have two faces of the same coin. And we need to consider nature time to allow us to recover, and with that to avoid major problems related with injuries. The way you're gonna do it, of course, the way you're gonna operationalize your recover, the time you will give to recover is fundamental to be successful. But again, of course, it's important to understand that without recover and without giving time for the players to achieve again, you are putting the squad, individually the players, in risk of getting injuries and, of course, staying out of competitions where, of course, the team will be influenced on results and on performance.
So 2 questions about this. One is, when you talk about recovery, you're talking about recovery on the training pitch playing football, not just taking time off. And secondly, how do you target to individuals? What judgment do you make as a coach about which players need more recovery time than others, or which players are more in danger of getting injured than others?
Yes, you can also give days off, of course. Recovery is also part of that. It's important for the mental side of the recovery to keep people away from the context. I think it is important. It's also the emotional side of it, where they can have time with the families and just disconnect for a while from the process. But then when we refer to training, we are speaking about active training. And I believe there is, in the specificity of the game, ways to do that recovering process. Of course, it's important that if you are using the specificity to help players recover, it's important that you are not having more fatigue. It's important to understand and to know what you are doing and to choose well the exercise you will do to help complement the recovering process. So basically this.
And you also are adjusting the training for each individual player. So part of your job as a coach is to assess, this guy looks like he's got more fatigue than another, therefore I need to adapt his training because he's in danger of becoming injured.
Yeah, I think it's fundamental to understand that communication is a very important part of it. From the match and from analyzing what happened in the match, you have an idea of what was the demandings. You know that for sure the opposition created you problems, and maybe one or two players in your team was demanded more work from them. And of course, when you have this understanding and then you match that with the feedback you get from the players, apart from the collective process of recovery, you pay more individual attention to each one of those players. It's really important that we have also, apart from the collective focus, you have an individual focus. Go through everyone, ask and communicate, and ask them to say how they are and how they feel, and try to get the professionals also from medical departments and different departments to help players in the more individual recovery.
Now, it's important to mention here that you can go back through the teams you've coached and look at the levels of player availability in those squads, and also the levels of fitness demonstrated by the trophies they won competitively. So there is data there, the most important data I think I would argue in football, establishing that this methodology works. But we've talked about how you get players fit to play football and how you keep them fit to play football. Let's talk about the actual style of football you ask them to play. On your Instagram account, which I'd urge all our listeners to follow, you describe coaching as an art form in which knowledge, experience, and creativity can combine together to sculpt a masterpiece of a football team. How do you as a coach go about selecting the style of play in which that masterpiece of a football team will play?
When I refer to that, is a bit philosophic too. The idea is to say that the way the coach plays, or his ideas of the game he wants for his team, is a bit of his fingerprint. So it's a bit of what he is also as a personality, the way he understands the game should be. Of course, this is not about a coach arriving into a team and say, I have these ideas and my team will completely play the way I think the team should play. You need to understand what you have, what kind of players you have, what qualities and skills you have in your squad, and try to match those with what you want to achieve as a game idea. And this is one of the biggest mistakes a coach can do, that is not to try to fit both or just decide by this is my idea and players will need to do whatever I want them to do, or simply follow the players you have and don't get any idea in and just wait for the miracle to happen. And the fact that I say is an art form, it means that it is in a sense of building the best exercises to try to fit those two things I was speaking before. So the idea plus the player's quality, creativity, and of course, implement a way that fits the two, trying to get the best exercises, the best context of practicing that will allow that combination, and that in the end will create what we can call your model of play. That is the result of your idea plus the players you have. And the more accurate you are fitting both, more success you will have. When I say the masterpiece, it means that if you are accurate on that analysis and on matching your ideas with the players' qualities and creativities, no doubts you can create fantastic teams with beautiful harmony and performing great in all sense.
And specifically, how do you teach the players your ideas, your game idea? Another quote from your Instagram, you talk about, for a player, to play well is to achieve a balance of the desired game style, accurate tactical and technical abilities, and the power to physiologically meet those needs with an enormous mental resilience. How do you coach the player to have accurate tactical abilities?
I think when you decide by a certain exercise, you have an objective. So it's not something that you just select from a book of exercises, or you go online and you get, because today is easy to go online and get football exercises. When you really choose an exercise, it's because you want to work some qualities that you want to develop in your team. And once you give space for creativity inside that objective you have for your exercise, so it's constant open happenings of football questions and answers, if we can say like this. If you allow the players to develop themselves inside those objectives, you are creating conditions for them to get that balance between what are the coach's ideas and the players' qualities, of course, their tactical individual and tactical individual qualities, matching the tactical collective idea. And of course, once doing that, you are also requiring fitness demandings, and of course, those will match also
the way
those
you want
objectives.
to play.
The way you want to play, basically the idea you want to work with the exercise you choose. In the end, is develop everything happening at the same time, and the answers players are giving are matching those needs from the exercise, and of course developing the best and the best shortcuts to an efficient performance.
So let's talk about a concrete example. One of the lazy criticisms of teams that you coached earlier in your career was that they were overly defensive. Incredibly, that critique extends to your 2011-12 Real Madrid team that you coached with Jose Mourinho, which you took a record 100 points and 121 goals in a single La Liga season, both records which still stand. Specifically, what kind of exercises were you using to get that Real Madrid team to play in a way that they scored so many goals and won so many games?
First of all, that idea is created in a moment where I think comes after the semi-final we did against Barcelona with Inter, where we played more than, I think, 65 or 70 minutes with one player less against a very good team. And that one of the ways to try to get out of that match was to defend. And from that, it came up that idea that or someone saw or start saying that we are really defensive. We are a very good transitional team, that when winning the ball, we are very accurate, arriving to the opposition hands. And I will not say to you that there were specific exercises built to be in a low block and then come out in a very accurate way to arrive in the opposition's goal. There is a number of exercises you do to improve the way your team defends. Of course, the block, the position of the block and the way the block is organized is compact, presses the zone of the ball. Of course, there are many exercises to help you do that, but with the block in a low position, in a medium position, or even in a high position, there is so many exercises that are involved in the process of coaching that will allow you to create a diversity of ways to give answers in the game. And I cannot say that our idea was to have the team in a low block and be there defending, and then when we have a chance, we go and we counterattack, like many people was saying we would do. The reality is that we had qualities in players that in the certain moment of the game, when we were in a lower block or without the ball defending, once you get the ball, we knew clearly what we need to do, and of course that is work it. You create conditions for that particular moment. But doesn't mean that you are always training like that to do matches in that way. Everyone wants to have the control of the game. Everyone wants to have the ball. Some teams are more conditioned to do it, others less. It's important to feed the players with ideas that allow them to understand that if they don't have the ball, they need to know how they should defend. And when they win the ball, that moment they win the ball, what to do with the ball, how to decide what is the next thing to do. So if imagine, for example, if it's go for possession, to take the ball out of pressure, or to look for depth. It depends always on the objectives you want. And of course, that particular case you were speaking, we had fantastic qualities up front that in situations, and we are not the only ones. Today, the best teams that are able to win the ball in a transition and arrive quick to the opposition end and score, and they don't say they are defensive or that they are a counter-attack team. I think it's a moment of the game, if you have quality players up, that you can make the difference. And from that, of course, you always create situations in your training sessions to cover all aspects of the game. And of course, we design exercises where in a situation of low or medium block, you have concrete objectives to attack the opposition goal in case you win the ball. So I cannot particularize that we are just doing that. Of course not. I think more of information you are able to give to your team to feed them with different tools to face the matches, better prepared you are.
So a central part of your coaching methodology is to provide the players with these tactical solutions through the exercises you give them on the pitch. Then you design a strategy for a particular game. But there are games where the strategy doesn't work or events go against you and you have to change during the game.
Yeah, you expect the opposition to do something and probably the opposition doesn't do it. So you are expecting a certain kind of problems and you are not having that problems, and you need to quickly adapt maybe to other problems that the opposition is creating. That happens too. And that is part of the game. But better prepared is your team, better identified are your players with the way you want to play with your organization, your own organization, better you are able to face the opposition. What I mean with this is people sometimes make confusion when they prepare matches, that they go defining their strategy, they go down a road where they really change a lot the team dynamics. And the strategic side, it gets more important than the way they play. And then they get surprised that the match doesn't come up very well, that the players can't perform so well as they were. So I think it's fundamental to understand that the strategic side is just an extension of your game organization or of your team identity. And of course, preparing strategically a match is something that is just a part of the match you want to happen. But we don't play alone, and of course opposition sometimes comes with a different approach, and then they can surprise you, and it's your job on the bench to orientate your players to adapt to the reality of that moment.
So let's talk about that, because I think personally it's a big differentiating factor between coaches is the speed with which they recognize that something's going wrong in a game, can see what's going wrong in a game, and then fix it, remedy it by changing the strategy for a match. What do you pay attention to in a game in order to get that information, understand as quickly as possible whether your strategy is working and how you need to adapt it?
Yeah, one of the most important things is for you to understand your team, to know well your team, and to know where, put yourself in the opposition situation and try to understand how I would play against myself. And from analyzing the opposition and trying to understand and understanding what they normally do, and at the same time trying to anticipate what they can do is a very important thing. And then, of course, when the match starts, you try to analyze when they have the ball, what they are doing, or to analyze if they don't have the ball, how they are defending, if they want to press you high with a high block and try to stop you from build up in first phase or even second phase. Try to understand what they do when they are in a low block. Is something that can take some minutes. A really important change on structures, the way they occupy spaces on the pitch, even if the structure is just a moment of starting or a moment of reorganizing the team after a certain moment of the game, offensive to defensive or a transition moment. all those things are important for you to understand if you need to create any particular changes to your team. But I honestly think if your way of playing is consolidate, normally you don't have much problems. That is details who make the difference, are details on the way you want to have. Imagine you come up to a match and the opposition decide to press man-to-man in your midfields. What you gonna do, what you will ask to your players. Sometimes players find the solutions themselves. Other times you need to help them finding the solutions. And you will find a way to avoid that pressure, or minimum put your players in different positions on the pitch to avoid that pressure. So it depends on a particular match and a particular event to tell you exactly what kind of changes you can do. But the truth is that it's fundamental to interfere. But of course, during a match, players have a big importance on it, and the way they perform and the way they also understand the game is fundamental.
Let's talk more about players and managing players, because I think sometimes people in this era of data and analytics, they forget that footballers are human beings like all of us, and they have to be managed from a mental perspective to keep them on board with the ambitions of the team. You talk about playing well being a state of mind.
Yes. I think is one of the secrets of a good leadership is to understand individually well each players you have. It's a big work. Yes, it's a big work. Everyone is different, and better you understand the individual, better you understand the man, better you will be able to get the best out of it in terms of performance as a footballer. I'm saying this, but you can hear many coaches saying this. The boundaries is not the right word, but the connections you are able to create with the players, with the men, if we want, and of course with the player, is important to feed the level of success you want to achieve. Better each one, better you are able to communicate and to get the best out of it is if we think we can treat everyone the same way. And of course, when you coach everyone together, when you communicate, and when you, outside of the training context or the competition context, people is different, and you need to be able to have good communication with them, and to be able to create the best context for them to succeed, for them to express themselves, and of course, deliver the best they can as a player.
A modern football squad will generally have at least 23 players. That means the majority of them don't start a game, and 7 of them aren't going to play, or more aren't going to play each game, even from the bench. How important is it to keep the whole of the squad, the players who are not contributing on the pitch, on board with the team's goal for the season? And how do you do that?
One thing is fundamental is that is winning. Okay, results are the biggest vitamin for a good, healthy group. But of course, every player have their own objectives and their own individual objectives to achieve. And they want to play, of course. And we are in trouble if it's not like that, if they don't want to play, because that will be a big problem. But they all want to play. I think it's fundamental for you to understand that after the competition or after the match, you have different kind of mental levels or different state of minds, if we can say like this, different levels of happiness and frustration, because you played a very bad match, or because you played a great match, or just because you didn't play. And when we are worried about the results and about the best strategy for the next match, or what we're going to do in the next match, we will select, and who are the players performing better and everything, you need to consider that you have a certain number of players who didn't play full match, or who not even played 1 minute, that they need the best of your attention, because they are waiting for it. They want to show to you that they are in conditions to play, and their happiness, of course, and their sense of part of the group is fundamental for your team stability, because they also influence the mood of the squad. And of course, the most important thing is you need to be aware of their performance and the way they are training, and the way you have a close relationship with them on the daily training, to understand if they are in conditions to contribute for the team, and of course to motivate them and for them to understand that you are there paying attention to them and ready to make them play when the chance comes.
So you actually pay more attention to the players who haven't been on the pitch?
Those days it's fundamental, because they are the ones who need more of your attention. I think if you don't, as a coach, if you don't think this is crucial, you have a big problem. And when I say this, whatever is the assistant that is leading the groups in a training session, the presence of the coach is fundamental. Presence of the head coach is fundamental. It's fundamental for the players to understand that in their heads is the decision person, so they need to see that this person is paying attention to their performance.
This is the Transfers podcast. I'm contractually obliged to have a discussion about signing footballers and bringing new players into a team. Rui, when you look to change your squad and bring players into the squad, what aspects of a player do you pay attention to? Skill, personality?
Yeah, of course. I think it's a diversity of aspects that are fundamental. First of all, you need to understand what are your needs. And today, football clubs have huge departments of recruitment with a lot of people working on that. And in some cases, I think that the coach not even have a word on the decisions of signing players. I don't really agree with this. I'm not saying that it's the coach who needs to choose the players, but I think the coach should always be consulted on deciding which players to sign. Because like I said before, coaching and playing in a certain way is an identity. And I think there isn't a person more able to understand what are the team needs than the coach. I think it's a teamwork, it's a work to be done from the coach and the different recruitment professionals, but it's a work to be done as a team. Again, it's important to understand, of course, the skills and the qualities of the players, the personality, the context where they are playing, certain aspects of players' life that are also fundamental to understand if it will be a player that will adapt to your context or not. There are some main references that give you an important idea about what kind of player you should choose for your team.
What's the best way to collaborate with a scouting department?
The best way is give an accurate feedback of the type of player you want. If we are speaking about a winger as an example, what kind of winger you want? Someone that is always looking to play in depth, is good on 1v1s. If he's a right winger, you want to decide if he's left-footed or right-footed, and that is according with the idea you have for the way you want to play. If you are hiring a new player, of course, if you can decide accurate skills for your idea of playing, of course, is fundamental. So the best information you can provide to the recruitment team to give them an idea of the kind of skills you need to fit your playing idea, the better. So basically is on giving a good picture of the kind of qualities you need, and the qualities, human qualities also, and playing skills and qualities.
And looking back on your 20 years in football, if I asked you who was the best signing of all the clubs that you worked at, who came in and made the most difference to the effectiveness of that team, who would you pick?
Well, I don't know. To be fair with you, we had so many good players that fit in our object. You see, there is one story that I always like to repeat, that is when we signed Modric to Real Madrid, we really didn't stay long. But I remember that he was considered the flop of the season when we signed him. And everyone knows the influence he had on Real Madrid all these years, winning Champions League, and how important he was for that team. So if we can say that a player that had a really big impact even after we left in a squad, maybe Modric is one of them. But I'm sorry if I forget others, and we had so many that they came into the team and they really did well, signing Drogba for Chelsea, or even signing Schneider for Inter, or even Eto'o. So many players that did so well for us when we signed them. that is hard to pick up one. And maybe so that's why I say Modric's story is one of the beautiful ones, because he was considered the flop of the season and he became what he became, the importance he had on the last 10 years in Real Madrid.
And the other side of improving a football team is to take players from the club's academy and promote them into the first team. You've talked about this on Instagram and said that the focus should be on developing tactical and technical skills, both individual and collective.
Yeah, I see, and of course I have the experience to see and to understand. Sometimes we don't really want it to interfere with the work that was done in the academies. Even if we come with a certain philosophy, we try people to understand the philosophy of work we have, but we don't influence people to change the way they are doing things. And I think in academy there is a lot of work being done with chasing a certain kind of objectives, individual objectives, that sometimes they are even more problematic than helpful. What I say is people lose too many time in the gym, chasing muscular bodies, thinking that football is just about that. Even players in age, they are still growing, still getting maturity in their bodies, and they spend too much time on inside the gym, pushing weights and developing muscular synergies that in some cases they are even prejudicial for their performance. And I think then they lack a lot of information to develop their individual skills, defenders to be able to defend 1v1s, defenders to be able to mark in set plays, knowledge that is fundamental for basics of the game, that sometimes players arrive in the first team, and as an example, a fullback doesn't know how to close a space inside when the ball is in the opposite side. That is a basic knowledge. Or covers made when a central back loses the position in a defensive line. And this comes all from basics in academy. And too many coaches are worried with the fitness side of the players' development. And they forget that we are speaking about football and everything that is football related and related with their technical and tactical individual qualities, that those are the fundamentals for players to perform. But when I speak like this, it's important to always refer to, you need also to know what you do when you decide to go for a specific methodology, because you need to be able to create context situations where the players develop the right skills. So you need to really think about different kind of game situations that will allow players to develop all those individual technical and tactical qualities, the same way they develop physiologic qualities according with the needs. I know, and many people say to me many times that it's not enough, that they need to go and develop strength in the gym, but that goes down to also to your philosophy and to the methodology you believe, and to the concept of strength you have in football. I believe strength in football is still related with the right synergies to do a specific action in the game, and not in a machine. And when you think you can transfer from a machine, as an example, an acceleration plus a change direction, a braking of a run, and a new acceleration or a jump, and you put that together in 2 seconds or 1.5 seconds, of course you will not find that in any kind of context that apart from the specific context of the game. And this is also an example that goes back to the questions you did before, that about preparation and about being accurate when you develop qualities in the players to avoid getting injured. And they are here. They are in the way you help players to develop their skills. And kids, like I said before, I think people spend too much outside of the pitch context and doing things that, in my opinion, they are not fully accurate to the demands of the game.
So it's important to get them physiologically adapted to football itself, and to have them have a full set of tactical skills so that they can come into the first team and be able to perform. Is it also important to select the right moment, if you can, to introduce academy players to the first team squad training and to first team matches?
I think that's fundamental. The right time is crucial, but the right time is not always the right time. How can I say this? The perfect time would be to say that team is winning, is performing, and you start adding young players into the team to positive contexts where they feel comfortable and they feel confidence to perform because the team is confident, and that will allow them a better integration. But sometimes they also come into the team when the team needs, when the team doesn't have any other options, and they are just through. You need to throw the player in the middle of that context and ask them to perform. We can never say is the right moment in that situations, but can become the right moment. So it's always hard, but the perfect picture is to have your team competing and performing well in a very positive moment where you can start integrating players with more confidence and of course with positive memories for the player that will increase the levels of confidence to perform again and again.
Football's grown immensely in the last 2 decades. Some football clubs now have as many as 1,000 employees, and a coach isn't just the front of house. He isn't just working with the first team. He has to ensure that all the departments of a football club work together. You described this to me once as being like an octopus. Your arms going in all directions in the club. Tell us about the importance of being an octopus coach.
I think, look, Duncan, on this situation, I think clubs change a lot, and more, the idea that is coming to me is that the coach is not important anymore for some clubs. So they are just another professional in the club that he just needs to coach the players. And I don't fully agree with that. I think the coaching staff, not just the coach, but the coaching staff needs to be prepared to try to get the best out of each department. So I'm not saying that you arrive in a club and you change the dynamics of as an example, a medical department, but you need, of course, to bring some rules that will help to develop the work you want to do to achieve results. And I believe that being an expertise on coaching and on methodology is fundamental. But it's also fundamental to understand a little bit of injury recovering, a little bit of communication for communication department, a little bit of performance, if we can say like that, to understand what is happening with the sports science department. But be in control of the process. You know what I'm saying? It's not easy for a coach, and especially most of the times their expertise goes just down to the game and to be on the sideline and to understand what is happening in the game. But for me, I still believe that being the coach, the responsible for the results and taking always the responsibility of the results, he needs to be in conditions to influence all the departments around him to provide the best dynamic for the day by day in the work. For you to be fully concentrated on developing the best you can, the best abilities for your team to play, you need to have all the different departments around the team, because at the end, it's not just about 11 players on the pitch and the coach. It's about many professionals around the team daily that needs to be synchronized in a way that the synergies that come out from each department help the team to develop the best performance.
But if you have a coach with experience who understands all these separate elements, you emphasize, for example, an understanding of the job of the medical department, of the job of the sports science department, the marketing team, the media department. If you have a coach who's able to work in synergy with all of these people, then the club has a much better chance of winning.
Of course. I think there is greater, or how can I say, if the departments are becoming too big with too many professionals, is too many information, is more difficult to have everyone speaking the same language, if we can say like this. And it becomes hard to not lose the control of the process, because in my opinion, it's not about controlling, it's about not losing the control, like I said before. And it's already too many things from outside the game, from outside the club, influencing players' performance, that if inside all the departments you have around you are not focused to one single objective, that is to get results and to get the best out of the players and to win, it's harder, it's difficult. Everyone is important in the club. Everyone, from the physiotherapist to the kitman to the analyst, everyone is important. But everyone is important. It's just important if their collaboration have the same objective than the team and the coach's ideas and objectives. If everyone is focused to develop a proper work and an accurate work to improve the team. And I can tell you today that is much more difficult to happen.
So Rui, after 2 seasons at Manchester United, the Emir of Qatar hired you to coach Al Duhail mid-season. Within 4 months, you defeated Qatar's strongest team to win the country's most important cup, despite having a player sent off after 25 minutes of the final. The following season, you set Duhail on course to win the Qatar Star League. They were unbeaten and well ahead of Xavi's Al Sadd with 10 games left when you returned home to London because you saw COVID was going to come in and shut down the world. You're still in your 40s, and best wishes from the Transfers podcast for your birthday this week. And you clearly still have a huge amount to give to football. Ideally, what comes next for Rui Faria?
Oh, that's a very hard question. The best context is always a context of important ambitions. I always work in context to win, to achieve important things. And I feel that as my pedigree in a certain way is my experience and is something I can do well. And I look forward for that. But football is unpredictable, and it's hard to say today what is the best context to do a good job.
But you want to coach again, and you're ready to coach again?
Yes, that's for sure. I never lost that idea, even if I decide to stay out for a while and that plays against me. But I'm ready to come back, and I'm ready to share my experience with clubs that have desire to achieve good things.
And I understand that since your friend Jose Mourinho returned to football with Fenerbahce, you've had a number of Fenerbahce fans asking you if you'll be going back to work with Jose again.
Yeah, it's true, but people doesn't know about it, and is not in conditions to understand that it's now 6 years that I don't work with Jose, but they probably think I'm still working with him. And yes, I had a lot of questions about going to Fenerbahce or be part of his coaching staff, but that isn't the reality.
Rui, thank you so much for joining us on the Transfers podcast. It's been an education and a delight.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Transfers podcast, powered by FootballTransfers.com. Please subscribe to our feed on your preferred podcast platform, rate us, review us, and even tell your friends. You can follow and message us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Transfers Podcasts, and you can follow us on Twitter at TransfersCast. We'd like to build a wee community there, so we will follow you back. Rui is on Instagram at Rui Faria _RF. And if you're a real glutton for punishment, you can follow me at Duncan Castles. Our music and production is by Mark Caulfield at Pro Podcast Production. We'll be back next week. Stay safe, be well, and thank you for listening.